tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Here in the studio shortly, none other than the captain of our pirate ship, Mr. Ted Yoho. Good morning, Ted.
Good morning, John. Good morning. How you doing? I'm here incognito, but we'll be there momentarily and look forward to a great show. A lot going on today, isn't there?
Yeah, it's really a dull news day, right? I mean,
Yeah, right.
When I was putting our show notes together last night, I did put in there that, we need to talk about the hostage situation, whether they released or not. And because we knew it was going to be some big news coming out of Israel. And I'm blessed to say and overjoyed to say the hostages, the 20 living hostages and some of the deceased actually are free and back in Israel as we speak. It is an amazing, spectacular, glorious, blessed day, sir.
It really is. I mean, nobody thought this would happen. Historic, too. For President Trump to come through and make this happen, and he deserves the credit on this. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, and a lot of people involved, but he was the one that had the vision that brought this together. And I was listening to it on the way in, and the praise he was getting in the Knesset by the members of the Israeli legislative body, you could just feel the enthusiasm coming over and the joy. And like you said, the return of those hostages was something he laid out as the first point, and it's happened. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And I was listening to some coverage as well on the way in, and one of the gentlemen was talking about that when the Air Force One actually did a little bit of a flyover when they were coming into, I guess, Jerusalem there, Tel Aviv, I'm not sure exactly, but they said that people were literally running out of their houses and screaming for President Trump. And I've also heard that people in Gaza are actually chanting Donald Trump's name, and it's not in a bad way. They're giving him praise. The citizens of Gaza are fed up with this as well. I don't know about Hamas,
Oh, yeah.
but the average person, and they're literally cheering from the rooftops over there. Who would have ever thought that the Israeli citizens and the people living in the West Bank and Gaza would be cheering for the same figure at the same time? It's just amazing.
It is. That's why I say it's so historic. Nothing like this has happened in our lifetime, in mine. And when you said the people in that area, it's the Palestinians that are chanting Donald Trump. And it's in a positive way, as the Israelis are doing. Hamas is gone. I mean, the Palestinians are fed up with them. They want to get on with a peaceful life, and they're willing to move forward. And you just don't see that. If we can only get cities like New York City and Chicago and Portland to chant Donald Trump, you imagine how much safer America would be.
Yeah, it's true. And, what I was thinking about, I was talking to an Israeli friend of mine. He's an American citizen now, and I was talking to him yesterday leading up to all of this. And, one of the things that people have talked about is the destruction in Gaza and all that, which is horrific. There's no question that there was destruction there. But if you think about it, Ted, freedom always has a cost. And there's no place that I'm thinking of that hasn't had freedom that didn't come with a high price of destruction as well. I mean, even in our country, we had destruction during the Revolutionary War and really a lot of total destruction during the Civil War. And if you look at Germany, they were obliterated after World War II, totally bombed out, the entire country essentially. And with help and hard work, they're now the number one economy in Europe. And Japan to go to that side of the world, had 2 nuclear bombs hit on them. And those 2 cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, are some of the most vibrant cities on the planet, and they have freedom like no one else in that part of the world has. So, out of this destruction can literally come freedom if the people will work for it, and with the right type of help, helping them to help themselves. The possibilities are endless.
That is so true. And you look at Vietnam and South Korea after the Korean War. South Korea is our 6th largest trading partner. Vietnam is our 10th largest trading partner. And this is something I always said when I was on foreign affairs, talking to these foreign ambassadors and presidents from other countries. If war is impending, why don't we skip the war part? Because after wars, we rebuild economies and we become great trading partners. Why don't we skip the war part so we don't kill a lot of people and do all this destruction, and just focus on trade? And if we do that, I think everybody will be a lot better off. But yet, unfortunately, sometimes there needs to be that tipping point to get people to change their thinking. But I would think in today's society, as smart as people are, and the amount of history we have at our fingertips, we can say, you know what, let's do what Israel and the Palestinians did. They had a terrible war. Let's rebuild, and let's put the war stuff aside and just get rid of it, and get rid of those kind of people that want to foment that stuff.
Well, that's a great point. And, the flip side of the coin I was just talking about, Ted, is that where you've had great destruction, when they did not choose freedom, they have not rebuilt and had the success that the countries that chose freedom. You look at the communist countries, you look at Cuba, there was great destruction there, and they're still in prison, so to speak. If you look at Haiti, as much as destruction has happened there over the years, when they didn't choose freedom and pay the price for freedom, they still have not rebuilt. Russia falls right into that category. They had several chances at freedom, not the least of which was when they had the fall of the Soviet Union, but they still ultimately chose communism, and look what has happened.
That's a great analogy to point that out. And we see that around the world. You can look at the nations in Africa. You can look at Somalia, which is a nation in Africa. But you just see that kind of leadership and death and destruction, because you know what, John? They don't have opportunity. They don't have hope for the future. They don't know any difference. And that's where the Western ideologies that America was built on and really created, the pursuit of liberty and happiness. And if you don't have those built into your basic structure of your government, you have what you just described. I mean, you look at the Soviet Union. What is your chances there of becoming an entrepreneur and coming from nothing and becoming a billionaire are probably pretty slim compared to other parts of the world that have the liberty and freedoms like you just described, and they have a system in place that will give you those opportunities. And I think that speaks loudly of what we need to fight for, and why our system of government is so important. It's not perfect, but we can work to make it better every generation. And that's really our goal, and that's really our responsibility as citizens of this country.
I was listening to MSNBC coverage before I left the house, before Mr. Trump got to speak. And as I say, I do. It's a public service, so people like you don't have to listen to it. And they had
I greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. They had this young fellow on there, and this is before President Trump spoke. He was talking about how the fight over there and all, that he didn't want to totally give President Trump credit. And he said that one of the things that President Trump was doing in his first term and now in this term was he campaigned on America First, which this speaker labeled as an isolationist agenda, and that he interviewed MAGA people and that they were for isolation. And he just doesn't get it. America First is not an isolationist policy. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump has been active in the world affairs since before he became president, and in his first term, that America first simply means that America first, and our foreign policy should be in that regard. And I'll say this, and I'll turn it back to you, Ted, that people don't give President Trump enough credit in his first term for what's happening now, because as he would call it, the Abraham Accords, Donald Trump embraced young rising stars in the Arab world, in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, in the Arab Emirates, and all of those different countries. He embraced a new generation of people that actually did want peace and they wanted to make money. And he took a risk and embraced those people. And out of that, we had the Accords come, and I think you're seeing the fruit of that as they're now in senior leadership in those countries. So Donald Trump is no way near an isolationist. America first doesn't mean America only. It just means that our national interests should be put out into our affairs around the world. I don't think he gets enough credit for what he did in his first term.
He really doesn't. And we talked a lot about that as people came in, as I traveled around. They said, well, you guys want to be isolationists. I said, no, we can't be successful if you're not successful. And so, yeah, we're going to put our country first, and it's biblical. It goes back to the Bible. It says you can't feed your neighbor if you're starving yourself. So take care of your own house, and I think Jesus said that don't worry about the splinter in your neighbor's eye when you got a log in your own. Take care of your own business first, build it strong, and then help your neighbors. And I think that's exactly what's happened here. And this is a historic day. And, I think we all celebrate it. How long it lasts, we don't know, but it can't last a long time if it doesn't start, and it started.
Absolutely. And the thing also that Donald Trump said during his speech, he said so much, but he gave that a hand of peace, offered a hand of peace once again to Iran, and said, you can come into this. And, and he mentioned the Iranian people that he knows in this country, and I'm sure some over there. The Iranian people, by and large, want peace and prosperity, I believe, as well, as I do believe most people actually do. And so I'm hoping that they will make the choice and join the nation and the Abraham Accords and join the world in ushering in a whole new era of peace on earth. I know that sounds naive, but I truly hope and believe that can happen.
No, naive is good. I like naive because you're not clouded by all the garbage that could happen. You're looking at what are the possibilities, and I really do believe that can happen. I do. Can you imagine how different the world would be if we focused on those things and made those things happen instead of trying to blow things up and have these wars like Putin is doing? And that really is what we really ought to work on. And this is a start of that. If we can just move forward in that, how much better the world would be. And it's just neat that Trump was leading the way of this. The other thing I thought, and this is typical Trumpism or Trumpian, in the way that he called out their president to pardon Bibi Netanyahu. He goes, "Come on, what's holding you back on the world stage?"
Another thing
that was typical of Trump. Yeah, go ahead.
It absolutely was. Sorry, Ted, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But another thing that I got from the coverage, as I say, I was listening to some of the liberal talk show about it, and the only real criticism some of them had of Donald Trump's speech was it wasn't, it was too political, and it wasn't like epic enough. In other words, it's not going to be one that goes down into history and they have quotes from it and all that kind of stuff. But that's not Donald Trump's style. Donald Trump, one of his great strengths and what makes him such a deal maker, and some people don't understand it, but I think you and I get it, is Donald Trump just talks to people. When he gives a speech, he's not trying to give a speech for posterity. He's giving a speech to what is happening right now. He's trying to tell people, like my old daddy used to say, of anybody can take you where you want to go, but a true leader takes you to where you need to be. And he's just trying to do that. He's trying to have a conversation with people, and we'll talk more about it in a minute, but he's trying to have a conversation here at home with the Democrats and all of that, and they just won't have one. So Donald Trump is not one that's going to give you this speech and just be, oh, you remember when he said, ask not what you can do for you, but do for your country,
right,
what you can do. That he's not going to have those moments, because that's not what he's focused on. He's focused on just being an everyday person and trying to get people to come together for peace and prosperity. That's what his focus is.
It really is. And I'm sure a lot of those historic phrases are written into his speech, and he just chooses not to use them. He goes off script. And I used to drive my team crazy because they'd have these elegant speeches all done, and I would ad lib, and it would drive them crazy. But it was just talking from the heart. And like you said, talking to people, relating to people. And that's what he does. And, as I met with ambassadors and people from all over the world, I remember talking to the Crown Prince of the UAE. I said, I assume people in your country are like people in my country. They want security, peace, and freedom. He goes, absolutely. And I says, and I'm sure you want a better life for your kids than you grew up with. He goes, absolutely. And that's a universal thing. So why don't we do that and work at doing that instead of trying to tear everything down? And the Democrats really ought to have a moment in time and reflect and say, you know what? Let's get this garbage over, these fights over on the continuing resolution. And if we can get into the CRs later, that would be great, because there's no need for those. And it's just coming together, putting America first.
Well, as you and I were talking off the air before the show started, Donald Trump has really put the Democrats in a pickle now, because, and when I say this, I hope people understand the spirit I'm saying. I'm not saying that people out of work and not getting paid and all these kind of things isn't a big deal, but it makes this whole shutdown look pretty trivial and irrelevant when you look at the magnificence of what happened today in the Middle East and what can happen. If a lot of work to be done, but what the possibilities are, it makes the squabbles that we're having back here seem pretty insignificant, pretty pale in comparison.
It really does. I mean, look at the big picture. And if it happens over there, if we can get peace and consensus over there to start for reconciliation, why can't we do it here? And I think it's something we need to look internally and just say, let's get these differences beside, let's heal the nation, and let's stop this almost like warmongering. I know I sent you several articles about the impending civil war, and we don't want that. There is no way we want that. We want to move on. And there's people that are great people on the different side of the aisle than I was on, and it's just hashing out our differences. And that's really what we need, and that's what Congress needs to work on.
Absolutely. Well, Ted, I understand you've pulled up now and you're going to come on in here. We'll go ahead and take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, none other than the captain of our pirate ship, the Political Pirate Podcast, Captain Ted Yoho, will be in the house. So please,
that's right.
Please, if you want to become a sponsor of our show, check out the call line that says Contact Freddie. Please support our sponsors. We love the fact that you're listening, and spread the word far and wide. And we'll be right back with Ted Yoho in the house.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Meldon Law,
the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators. The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company, Shoot GTR, On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Ward, that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth!
All bees poop.
A warthog. He's going to come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
Welcome back to the 3Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast. I'm John Martin, your host. And of course, as promised, in the house, we have Mr. Ted Yoho.
Made it.
He came all the way from Keys all the way to here.
Just
what
to
a
see
drive.
you, John.
Just to see us.
Next to you.
Glad to have you, Ted.
Great show. A historic day, monumental.
Absolutely. It is joyous, to say the least. Well, we've been talking about, of course, the big news coming out of Israel and the Middle East, that peace there. We have the hostages released. There's still a lot of work to be done. Of course, President Trump is, if he's not already, he'll be on his way to Egypt to meet with an amazing group of world leaders. I'm not even going to list them all. It's just a huge group of them going to be there. And it almost leaves me speechless, Ted.
You know, it is. And, you know, you brought up the Abraham Accords, how this is building off of that. I was there on the White House lawn when they signed that. And you had the world leaders from, it was President Trump, Bibi Netanyahu, from the UAE, Qatar. And to be able to sign that and have all those people on the stage, actually it was on the balcony of the White House. It was a historic day. And, you know, this is definitely building on that. And that was one of the reasons they were able to do this, because when Israel went in and blew up the Hamas leader that was in Qatar, Qatar just says, hey, this is over. You guys got to get out of here. You're not going to be in power. And they put pressure. So what Trump did is he put that group of people together, those different nations, that went ahead and put the pressure on the Palestinians and Hamas and just said, this is over. We're done with this. And, you know, they're building on that.
Yeah, well, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with Hamas over the next few days and weeks. And it could just be literally days, because not only have they released the hostages, and of course, they're very armed up, and some really notorious people, including the gentleman, his name escapes me, I don't even really care about his name, but the one that
masterminded it.
Not only that, but a guy that was taken about 20 years ago, 10 or 20 years ago, where he had the red hand deal, where he literally killed an IDF member and had his blood on his hands and swiped it on that guy was released as well, or will be. And so there's some really, as Trump would say, bad hombres being released, but they don't have any financing anymore. If you believe everything that's being told, they don't have the chips of the hostages anymore. And I think the vast majority of people in Palestine, in Palestinians, I'm saying, they don't want to go through what they've just gone through. So the next few weeks are going to be very interesting to see what Hamas remnants actually do.
It really is. And the other thing is, typically after a conflict like this, the UN comes in, the peacekeepers, and they are ineffective. I mean, they are, I don't want to say worthless, but they're next to that. The security forces that are coming in are from the Arab nations that are surrounding that area, and they are in there to make sure Hamas disarms. And that's going to be a game changer in this, because now they have a vested interest in this, these other nations, and you're going to see them come together. And I really do believe you're going to see, just a whole change in the Middle East. And you got to think, the three great religions came from there, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. And it's such a significant region of the world that I can only think that good things are going to come out of this.
Plus, they got the oil.
Well, but what would have happened if Trump was not hounded for the first 4 years of his administration, his first term? What would have happened? How much further could we have been on this? Maybe we wouldn't be here right now. I don't know. But Trump was hounded for those 4 years, actually before he got elected. And I hope this is a message to the people that tried to disrupt what he tried to do, to look at where we're going and look at the possibilities of where we're heading.
Well, maybe
we're way off notes, aren't we?
Well, that's all right. Maybe God has another plan.
That's right. That's right.
Who knows?
Yeah, really.
But let's move forward a little bit, because you mentioned it a little bit when we first were starting the show, and I put a title here in our notes about peace in the Middle East and war at home, talking about the United States. And this is something that just got me last night when I was sitting there making these. It seems like the more that President Trump accomplishes, the crazier the left gets. I mean, there's just so many examples, and I'll give you a few in here in a minute. But it just
there's
this
not
is
a shortage of those examples.
I mean, I would love to say that, okay, this accomplishment is going to change everybody's hearts and minds, and it's going to in a lot of places. But the crazy far leftists, they'll probably just get crazier, Ted.
I think they will, because they're being boxed into a corner and they realize they're losing, so they're going to fight harder to prove their point, and it's a losing argument. And you can see it by the messages that the Democrats are putting out. I hate to use Democrats and Republicans because it's dividing people, but there's that camp of mindset that is over here on the left side, and they are like, well, what are we going to argue about now? And so they do. You're going to have the loud players yelling more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to play this video just to show you that the progressive left, it's interesting who they pick and choose to beat up on. And in this case, they'll beat up on presidential hopefuls. And you'll see this in just a second. I'm not even going to tell you who it is. I'll let you figure it out. But this person is about a hardcore leftist as you could possibly be. And if anything, was a friend to the Palestinian cause. But look how they treated her. And this was just yesterday in Washington, D.C., of all places. Check this out.
Genocide! The legacy will always be genocide! You know what? I am not president of the United States. You want to go to the White House and talk to him? Then go on and do that.
Your legacy is genocide!
The legacy will...
They literally are trouncing on Kamala Harris, and she's been getting this protest everywhere she's gone, but she literally, I guess, had enough of it and stood up. Maybe if she'd have stood up for herself like that during the presidential campaign, she wouldn't have had to write that book.
The amazing thing is, this is the person back pre-November 4th election. They were all rallying and lifting her up, and she was the savior of their cause. And now she's scorned like anybody else that has moved away from them. So, they're confused, and, the more they stay like that, I think the angrier, like you brought up, the angrier they're going to get. And it doesn't serve the nation well, and it doesn't serve their people that want to support that party well at all. And it just makes the other side stronger. So, keep going. They're doing great.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, Ted, I'm kind of tired of the term about genocide.
Right.
In some cases it applies, and there's been cases, and I'll get to it in a second, in our history where it's probably applied. But in this case, Israel was defending itself. They really had no choice. If they didn't defend themselves, they would be from the river to the sea.
It really would have been. And it's been talked about, Iran, throw North Korea in there too, because they want to blow us up, and I'm sure they'd take Israel too. And that kind of hatred, the river to the sea, the genocide, where do you stop? I mean, where does it start? But when you have Israel being attacked by the PLA, when they did that October 7th, 2 years ago, when they did that, look at the heinous crimes that they created. And Israel had every right to resolve that and go back in there and eliminate as much as they could. And if you're going after a very aggressive adenocarcinoma type of cancer that's going to kill you, how many cells do you leave left in your body? Do you get rid of them all? And I don't want to equate getting rid of cancer cells to eliminating people, but if you have that kind of hatred that's brewing, and I don't know where you stop it. Keep in mind that in Palestine, in their textbooks to their children, they equated Jewish people with pigs, and they had to be slaughtered. And this was the kind of things they were teaching their kids. The Palestinian Authority was paying people to be in prison, like the guy you said they just let out. They were paying him while he was in prison, and they were paying his family. And if he were to die, they'd make him a martyr, and they'd pay his family more. And if you have that kind of a social structure or governing structure, you can't get rid of hate because you're breeding hate.
Yeah, and as far as that term genocide, to be fair, the United States really, to me, the only thing you could accuse us of, and it was really before the United States really became, quote, the United States to a certain extent, you could make a case that we committed in some way or form or fashion genocide
no doubt.
On American Indians.
There's no doubt.
There's
it's in
no
the history
doubt about
books.
That.
And, we had treaty after treaty with the American Indians. Andrew Jackson, I think he was the 7th president of the United States, and they had these treaties, and they broke them time and time again, and there was genocide here. There was a portion of the slavery movement where there was genocide. Australia did it with their indigenous people over there, the Aborigines, and unfortunately it's human history. It happens over and over again, but yet we advance over time to become better to where we don't have to do these things. And let's just hope we're at that point in time in history.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting, being Columbus Day and about the whole indigenous people and all. And one of the things when I first started a show some years ago, I actually had a pretty big following from Native Americans. And we still have Native Americans that watch this show quite a bit. And a matter of fact, one of them, Bear Hand, how are you? I'm sure she's watching. She always is. I don't pretend to speak for them by any stretch, but I thought a lot about why they support our show, why they supported Donald Trump in a pretty big margin. A lot of people don't know that. It's because, like a lot of people, they have a basic distrust of government.
Sure.
Who could blame them? They actually know the importance of freedom of speech and the Second Amendment, being well armed. They know what happens when you give away your guns and that kind of thing. So
really
they know,
do.
And they really, if you think about it, they haven't really been chiming in a lot for like reparations. From what I see, and as I say, I don't pretend to speak for Native Americans. I'm fascinated with their culture. They just want to be Americans, and they want to respect their culture, and they want freedom and prosperity and safety for their children and all the things that everybody else wants. I tip my hat to them. Now, did we commit genocide against the Germans? No, we obliterated them for the most part, but they attacked us. Did we commit genocide against the Japanese? No, we were defending what we thought was our nation and our right to exist, just like Israel. And we're friends with all these people because now they chose freedom. Germany chose, one side of Germany, it's a great example. One side of Germany chose communism. and went down as far as you could go. The other side chose freedom and became the most prosperous nation in Europe, and now they've rejoined. And it goes back to what I said earlier. If you choose freedom, you can rebuild from the ashes. If you don't, you're just going to live in them.
Right. And Germany, you know, it was Nazism, it was socialism. And this is what's so dangerous. Russia was communism. Cuba's communist. China's communist. Germany was a socialist country that became worse than communism because of the genocide that you were talking about. And so there's a distinction there. And I bring this up because Zoran Madani of New York is a socialist. And socialism, all communists are socialists until socialism happens, and then communism comes. And so this is New York. This is what they're voting in. And then you look at the Democratic enclaves around the country. You know, your Chicago, Philadelphia, L.A., you know, Portland. They're all socialist in nature in the way they're ruling, and we know what comes after that. And that's why the citizens of those areas, and we're here to educate you, the citizens of those areas, history repeats itself. And you can go back and just read the history books like of James Madison, Andrew Jackson, you know, our founding fathers. And yeah, they were white old men, but yet they weren't all old, but yet those principles are the ones that were put in place that we have fought that brought us to this point. And there was a lot of atrocities that happened, like you said, but yet, you know, we just need to build from there and move forward and bring all people with us.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Mandami. I want to play a video here. This
I did
is
that for you as a segue.
I know you're. That's why you're the captain of the ship, sir. But this is Zoran Mandami in New York just a couple of days ago, and he's talking about standing with Letitia James. But I want you to hear what he calls for. We're just going to play a brief snippet of it. Check this out.
And we will now have her back. Because there is nothing illegal or radical to believe that no one is above the law. So we thank you, Tish. We have your back. And we say to Donald Trump that if you want to get to the Attorney General, you are going to have to get through every single one of us.
I love how he says no one is above the law.
No one.
And I got to put the BS meter on that, man. No one is above the law.
You put it up there, too.
The Dems make heroes of everyone that is above the law. I mean, the list is long, Ted. I mean, you got terrorists, assassins, rioters, gang members, the Clintons, the Bidens, not to mention criminal illegal aliens or both. They're all, according to the Democrat leadership, above the law.
Yep. James Comey, James Clapper, Brennan, they're all above the law, you know. And look at Letitia James. She had the largest fine that I've ever heard of in my lifetime against Trump of $453 million over something that never harmed anybody. The banks never complained about it, but she went after it. And they had the 34 indictments against him. He got tried and convicted of those, but they're bogus charges. And she's done the same thing. So Miss Letitia James and Zoran Mandani, nobody's above the law.
Yeah, well, she actually did worse than Donald Trump in a sense that she lied about the use of the House. It's not like Donald Trump.
She committed fraud.
Yeah, he didn't. They got him for supposedly overvaluing Mar-a-Lago, and we talked a lot about that last Friday. But Letitia James, if she's guilty of what they're accusing her of, literally lied about her taxes and all of that stuff.
She lied for personal gain on those forms. Just as the Lisa Cook at the Federal Reserve did the same thing.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, you brought your attention to me to
this.
That's
my job.
You do. You do a good job. That's why you're the captain, sir. This is from the Daily Signal, and it's written by a senior editor there called Tyler O'Neill. and his title of this editorial piece is "Want to Prevent Civil War? Trump Has the Right Idea." So first of all, just why did you what made you want to pick this article, and we'll get into the meat and potatoes.
Number one, Tyler O'Neill. I didn't know him until probably 6 months ago, and I've read a lot of what he writes, and he's very well written, and he goes through these things in a very well thought process. And what Donald Trump is doing is he's declaring war on those things that are destroying America. And the radical left are trying to preserve those things that are tearing down this country. And, I reference that book of Andrew Jackson, The American Lion, and how they went through South Carolina, wanted to secede from the Union, and it was over tariffs from the North. That was really their biggest complaint. And the other thing is they feared the loss of slavery, and that was the secondary thing that led to the Civil War. And how it divided this nation. And what I see today, and as we say often, you hear often, history repeats itself. You look at the things that were dividing the nation then, and they're happening today, but it's over a different cause. And the radical left are trying to preserve the socialism, the lack of rule of law, illegal immigration, social programs that have been taken advantage of. And all you have to do is look at the food program in Minneapolis, $250 million in fraud. And all the people that are convicted and charged are from Somalia, and they're of the Muslim community. And this is a bad stain on the Muslim community. And so we're seeing the left stand with principles that are anti-American, anti-freedom.
Absolutely.
And that's what this article is about.
Well, Mr. O'Neill, he says this in his article. He says, this week the mayor of Chicago accused Donald Trump of declaring war on his city and claimed the conservatives want a rematch of the Civil War. It's pretty interesting how they say that, Ted. But the Civil Wars are the worst possible wars you could have, because not only are they destroying your own country, but sometimes you never get over them. The Civil War ended in the mid 1860s, but some of the issues are still plaguing us to this day.
And they will. It's interesting because I'd have the Japanese and the South Korean delegations come in. Sometimes they're prime ministers, and they wanted us to help heal the rift between those two countries, because during World War II, there was the Japanese pretty much kidnapped women and put them into prostitution. They called them comfort women. And so this is something that Japan's apologized for. They gave retributions for, and they've built monuments for. But South Korea can't get over that. And I'm not asking them to, because it's a terrible thing. But yet they're asking me to help. And I said, I'd love to help you. I said, but we still have problems from the Civil War that happened in the 1860s. This is something that the important thing is these things happen during war. The important thing is to avoid the war at all costs. And the left is wanting to take us into a war. And again, look at what they're looking to uphold: illegal immigration, the lack of rule of law, defunding the police, all the things that are going to tear down this country. That is the left. Back in the old days, during the pre-Civil War, they were fighting to maintain the South. Well, when you look at it today, there is no unified collection of states that are contiguous in the United States, like L.A., Chicago, Portland. They're all spread out, so it isn't going to work. This is going to be ugly if they keep going down this road, and this is why it needs to come to an end, and they need to come together as Americans.
Well, what's really fascinating to me, Ted, and you mentioned about our
I like you to be fascinated.
Former Civil War. Well, the South was arguing about the term states' rights. They had states' rights.
That's right.
And I guess it's amazing how things stay the same, because those were Democrats arguing for states' rights then, and now you have Democrats arguing for states' rights now for different reasons, supposedly. But they've accused the MAGA movement and the far right, if you want to call it that, of wanting states' rights, and the modern Democrats have defended the they want to do away to electoral college, all this kind of stuff, pack the courts, everything else. They have argued for the last probably century about a expanded federal government, but now they're arguing about states' rights again, which led us to the Civil War to start with.
It did. It is funny. I mean, history repeats itself. But you brought up how the mayor of Chicago is saying how the Trump and the conservatives are wanting to wage civil war on us. And it's typical of what the left does is they talk about the things that they do, but they blame us for doing them. And I mean, he's talking about us wanting to create a civil war. No, we weren't trying to prevent it. You're the ones that are doing it. And it's just over and over again, and it's nonsense. And come on, we're a better country than that. We hope, and let's move on.
Yeah, I want to play a quick clip from Governor Pritzker of Illinois, since we're kind of talking about what's happening in Chicago. I don't know what it is with these Democrats that want to pick fights. To be peaceful, they sure want to pick a fight. But listen to what he has to say.
Hours called for you to be imprisoned. I want to give you an opportunity. We've seen your reaction on social media, but I want to hear what you have to say back to the President of the United States.
Well, let's start with the idea that this is a convicted felon. I mean, think about that, who's threatening to jail me. I got to say, this guy's unhinged. He's insecure. He's a wannabe dictator. And there's one thing I really want to say to Donald Trump. If you come for my people, you come through me. So come and get me.
The President of the United States.
I don't know what it is with these Democrats. It kind of started with Joe Biden. Remember, he was saying, I'll take Donald Trump out behind the gym. And then we just showed Mandami talking about, come through me. And now you got Pritzker talking about, oh, you got to come through me. They're bucking for a fight, it seems like.
They really are. And what are they defending? I mean, give me a break. The people of those states, just like the people of the Palestinians, they want peace. They want a better life. And these governors and these mayors aren't giving them. Look at Gavin Newsom out there in California. Give me a break. They're the people of those areas that they control. I don't want to say control, but represent. They're fed up with that garbage. And I think the last election spoke loudly of that. And, wake up. Wake up.
Well, it might be that Teddy Roosevelt had it right when he said, basically in effect, if you want to piss off a conservative, tell them a lie. If you want to piss off a liberal, tell them the truth. Because I think that's what's happening. There's so much truth coming at them that it's just really irritating them.
I've read a lot about Theodore Roosevelt, but I don't remember that one. But
it's a good one.
It is. I have to go back and get another book out.
Well, Mr. O'Neill, getting back to this article, he's talking about whether or not we're headed for civil war, and he makes the case that Donald Trump is the answer to solving that equation. But he says in his article, the left has abated a massive lawlessness crisis that has divided and likely radicalized Americans. And he lists everything in there from the BLM riots to the millions swarming over the border, the general lawlessness that is happening. He essentially says that if we don't stop that it will lead to a civil war.
It really will. And, go back to Trump's first election. They had the Women's March on Capitol up there in D.C. And that's where, what's her name? Madonna got up and said she goes, I feel like I could blow up the White House. I mean, so this is a long pattern of them, of the destruction, the hatred, just that vileness, because they don't get their way. They're like spoiled kids. I don't know what it is, but they're not patriots at heart. In the same way you and I are, definitely.
He also points out that Democrats call for civility, but they're continually compare Trump to Adolf Hitler and immigration enforcement to the Gestapo. And that's where I came up with this meme that, Orange Man Hitler, Donald Trump, just freed the Jews. Just freed Jewish people. So if he's Hitler, he's the worst Hitler ever because he sucks at it.
Yeah, and he's saving the Jewish people. So,
yeah,
I don't know. Wake up, folks.
But Mr. O'Neill in this article, he goes on to says that Johnson, talking about the mayor of Chicago, accuses Trump of declaring war on Chicago. He himself is attempting, talking about the mayor, to nullify federal law within the Windy City, issuing an executive order forbidding immigration and customs, which are the police, enforcement from using city property like parking lots and vacant lots. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
He's going to learn a tough lesson here. Trump's going to come in there and do what he can to enforce federal law where federal law needs to be enforced. And when you have illegal immigrants here, people here illegally, he is going to enforce that. And he'll use whatever means he can, especially when it comes to federal property. He'll be there. And you would think these mayors would want to work to strengthen the safety of their cities for their citizens' sake, and the people are crying for it. I mean, they really want that. I mean, we've seen clip after clip on our show of where Democrats got up in mayor races in Chicago, and they said, we're tired of this. You guys are spending all this money, housing and medical care and education for people that came into this country illegally. What about our kids? And again, they're losing this over and over again.
Well, Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, recently said that President Trump is deploying troops like no president ever has. They're counting on the ignorance of people they're counting the education system.
That may be poor. His ignorance.
Yeah,
because he just doesn't have a clue what other presidents have done.
Ted, that's why we're always educating, motivating, and activating. But I want to point out two quick things, and I know you know this, just to give you an example of just how full of something that Mr. Pritzker is. In 1957, Dwight Eisenhower deployed 1,000 soldiers, regular troops, not National Guard, from the 101st Airborne Division, which is a serious dudes, to Little Rock, Arkansas, back in 1957. Not to be outdone by a Republican, JFK, the man himself, the Ole Miss riots of 1962 from September to October 1st, 1962, out in Ole Miss to the university campus now, he deployed, guess how many? Over 30,000, almost 30,000 regular military troops to quell a single disturbance in the United States. History does matter.
It does matter. And you go back, again, you heard me talk about Andrew Jackson. He had the Use of Force Act that got passed by Congress. It was 1832, I think. And they had over 10,000 troops ready to march into Charleston, South Carolina. And you go back to George Washington days, there was a rebellion called Shays' Rebellion where he mobilized, I think it was 5,000 Minutemen to squash the rebellion that was going on against the government. And so it's happened throughout history. And Mr. Pritzker, you ought to just read a little bit of history.
And the thing that really is sad is he knows that. He's not a dummy.
I would think he would know that. And,
he's just preaching out there to the masses.
He's just shown his ignorance or his one-sidedness.
But Mr. O'Neill makes a great point.
It's the hatred of Donald Trump is what it is.
It's Trump derangement syndrome, without a doubt. But Mayor Johnson, he's talking about in Chicago, makes the claim that the best way to prevent the instability and lawlessness that might lead to a civil war is the firm, public, and clarifying enforcement of the law, and which is true. The rule of law, though, here's the thing people need to understand, Ted, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. People are not going to put up with lawlessness. So our choice really is the rule of law, which is what we currently have, supposedly, or some strong man, which is what they don't want Donald Trump to be, to come in, because people aren't just going to sit back and watch their communities destroyed, their families killed, their livelihood taken away. At some point, something's going to change, and it usually changes for the worse if you don't have rule of law.
It really does. You get mob rule, and you get the lynchings, and you get all that happening again. We don't want to see that. And so this is a civil society. You follow the rule of law, and if you don't like them, run for office or vote people out that aren't supporting those things, but you don't go to this kind of violence. And this is where we see the left over and over again. Look at the assassination attempts on presidents. they always came from the left, it seems like. I don't see any that have come from the right, when I look at things. In fact, Andrew Jackson was the first one that they attempted to assassinate. And it happens throughout history. And it was always just people that either were really deranged or they were on the left fighting against our government.
Well, before I saw what the events of this morning, I wrote in my notes, I was going to ask you, is it too late and is civil war inevitable? But I think we got the answer to that already. Anything is possible.
Anything's possible. And that's why we got to keep hope, keep believing in those things that made this country great. Prayers always work good. And talk to your neighbor. I mean, if they're that upset, just find out why. And I learned a long time ago, when somebody's mad, just say, well, why do you feel that way? Why do you think that way? And, find out where they're at, and you'll find some common ground. And that's where we really need to be. And that's our responsibility in a responsible society. And so let's hope that people take that to heart, and we can make things better. It's our job.
Well, Ted, I'm always just trying to help. I'm always trying to help.
You are.
And I got a public service announcement. I want to play one more video to end on a little bit of humor, because we showed all these videos of people taking on, look, Donald Trump, bring it on. You got to go through me and all that. So I want to do a public service announcement to all those Democratic leaders who are wishing Donald Trump would come through there. Keep this in mind. You might get what you're not listening. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Be careful what you wish for, because DJT might take you up on your offer. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please like our sponsors, share, support our sponsors, become a sponsor, share our show far and wide. Ted, I will give you the last word, sir.
John, I appreciate it, and it is an honor to be here talking with you and our audience. And our goal is to educate, motivate, and activate people. And by doing these things, we're going to save this republic, and we're going to make it stronger for future generations. That is what we are tasked with, and we ask you to help us. And have a great day.
What he said. Peace out.
Later.